Well, hello, that's me again. Today is the 3rd of April. Finally, we're out or away from this stupid date, 1st of April, which many people begin to doubt if it's fake or real when you begin to convey to them some news. But here it is. It's Monday. And there are some very important things we have to discuss. And the question is, I want to immediately put my foot down, so to speak, for anybody who wants to ask the questions about the assassination of this blogger Tatarsky. You know what? Find better sites which deal with their media figures and especially what is called the sixth column. It's the term which Andrei Raevsky, the Saker, invented, came up with, and that's the only thing I want to say about it. Let FSB and the Anti-Terrorist Committee in Moscow and Russia deal with this issue. I know they're already getting to the bottom of it, and when it's done and cleared, we'll talk about it maybe, but I'm not very interested in discussing this situation, except for the fact that it was a terrorist act in the middle of St. Petersburg. And of course, I am absolutely appalled by people comparing Mr. Tatarsky to Darya Dugina, whose death I really mourned. She was a very, very full of light human being and wonderful young political leader. So Tatarsky was something different, but that's a separate issue. So anyhow, it's obviously very regrettable when people die, whoever they are. And in this case, just let's leave it at that. And anybody, as I already stated, who wants to see and understand what is going on, look up also the sixth column. So, but behind this all media events, the reason I'm doing this 2 days after I did my last video is because as already stated, the speed of the events unfolding is absolutely stunning. It's absolutely unprecedented. And I want to start with some very simple things which actually describe the catastrophe the Biden administration basically drove the United States to. And this is not about some stupid stocks, which are, again, no normal person looks at Wall Street Journal and says that, oh yeah, that's the real economy. There's nothing to do with that. But look at this, couple of things which needs to be addressed immediately. And this is just some signs of demonstrating a complete implosion of everything what have been planned by the cabal of neocons in Washington, D.C. and how it is beginning to, it's not just backfiring or boomeranging. It's such a blowback that at this stage I have to say that my book Disintegration, which actually was quite successful 2 years ago, probably was a little bit even tame when describing the possible outcomes of what we are observing today. But let's start with this. We'll start with that. I mean, it just cannot get any worse for Washington. If you look at actually, it is on the 1st of April, but this is not, that's why I mentioned about this Fool's Day. It's not Fool's Day news, it's the news, serious news, and look at this. India, Malaysia can now trade in Indian rupee. They are, basically, they signed their agreement, interstate agreement, which allows them now trade in the Indian rupee, and eventually this is one of the other things which shows the removal of the US dollar and euro too, and even Japanese yen from those accounts, because as Michael Hudson beautifully noted a few days ago, again, when you look at the West, you look at about 15–20% of the productive capacity of the world. What to do with the other 80? Well, and those other 80, and those are, of course, China, Russia, India, Vietnam, and Malaysia, and what have you. They suddenly recognize, well, not suddenly, it has been in making for a while now, and they recognize that, hey, we are basically responsible for the overwhelming majority of production in the world of manufacturing. Everything from agricultural products to high technology, satellites, computers, what have you. And then, well, guess what? Not only we're responsible for that, we also have the ability to issue the credit. So in this case, why do we need the West? And yeah, this is absolutely just legitimate question. Indeed, why do you need the West for anything? And we already have been seeing constant stream of the news about the fact that countries go, yeah, the dollar is done basically, so, and nothing could be done about it. And yeah, if the United States in 1950s was pretty much responsible for the half of the world manufacturing, it's actually, yeah, anybody who believes that GDP of United States is 23 trillion, I mean, I have a bridge to sell them. And yeah, when you look at those basically crooks, well, many of them, not all of them, but many of them who run all those economic media outlets in the United States and in the West, it's like, you have to only scratch your head and say, boy, this is delusion of the unbelievable proportion. And here's another proof of this, and this is just what I'm constantly on record. And believe me, it's not that I some kind of genius and figured it out. No, I'm just, reading media, open sources, and you just make your own conclusions. Here it is. So now they complain that, oh my God, Japan, is G7 member buying Russian oil above the Western price cap. Wall Street Journal laments. And well, guess what? Yeah. They established this or put this $60 a barrel cap on Russian oil, but guess what? Japan just recently bought around 748,000 barrels of Russian oil for approximately $70 a barrel. So, color me surprised? Not. Obviously, and everybody will be buying this oil the way the market. We want to live in capitalism, normal capitalism. Well, then let market decide those issues and let market find out the price. And here it is. And Russia was selling its oil, especially in the Far East. I mean, for way above their price cap, which was installed by all those strategists, quote unquote morons, essentially, who in the G7 who thought that they know what they're doing. They don't. They, in fact, they are now absolutely cornered. And Japan is just the part of it. They're obviously stunning shock, which has been sent to the system. A few days ago was the decision of the OPEC follow Russia's cut in the oil production. And last time I checked today the Brent oil on the oilprice.com, it was something like $89 or 85, so it doesn't matter. It fluctuates. You can look it up, and so there you go. That's your other, sanctions on Russia, which basically continue to bury a combined West, including the United States. Actually, it's not like United States threw Europe under the bus, which it did. But the point is, it begins to affect the United States itself, and that tells you about lack of any understanding of how the world operates and how other people look from the outside inside this bubble of the combined West, which is not even the West anymore. And that's what many people do not understand, and I will address this immediately now. The fact that they think that Russia somehow, cares about being the West. Well, they have to, and read my lips, get it into their minds. Modern West is not West anymore. It has practically nothing left from what made West, including, of course, its colonial quests great. But it's not the West. And Russia, when I said that Russia is the West now, I'm talking about that Russia is the basically arc which preserves the traditional Western tradition, including the Age of Enlightenment. But it is, of course, with the Russian twist and the type of the spirituality and the worldview, which is largely based in the Russian Orthodoxy, but other things too, including its massive Soviet experience. So, and when you look at this, it's just like, wow, here we are, just fighting those delusions, and those people evidently do not even learn what they are dealing with. But let's, in this case, go a little bit further, and I want to point out to 3 days ago, excellent piece by Dr. Hadra Kumar, this wonderful Indian diplomat. And again, I want to point out, I do not necessarily always agree with his points, but he is one of the best and eloquent foreign policy observers, especially from the point of view of their professional diplomat. And here it is. He published 3 days ago, well, 4, the piece which is called Russia Alone Can Already Confront the Entire West. I've been on it for a long time. You probably remember the title of my first book, which I wrote in 2017, and it came out early in 2018, which was Losing Military Supremacy, the myopia of the American strategic planning. This was the first time when I started to say they don't even know what they are getting into, and I kind of went and elaborated in depth on the situation with the America's industries, America's military-industrial complex, military and military history, which was, I was already then telling that you do not understand the size of Russia, you do not understand the, actually the scale of what Russians do. And in this case, I mean, Dr. Bhadra Kumar, and, you know, just basically confirms what I was talking about. And here it is. He also writes about this. And this is about Mr. Z, Comrade Z visit to Moscow. And here it is. And that's what conclusion which I entirely agree with Dr. Bhadra Kumar, because it's a brilliant insight, and this is absolutely, I mean, it's just correct. The Ukraine war, paradoxically, is turning out to be a wake-up call, a war that can prevent another world war rather than engender one. China understands that Russia has single-handedly taken on the collective West and shown it is more than a match. And then he continues, which is obviously when he talks about the publication in the Global Times, which is the pretty much semi-official Chinese publication. And the author he wrote that the war in Ukraine has evolved into a war of attrition between Russia and the West. While NATO is supposed to be much stronger than Russia, the situation on the ground doesn't appear so, which is causing anxiety in the West. And I have to agree, but it is not just anxiety anymore, it is outright panic. And when you look attentively at the numbers of Russian production on some military items, including the smart munitions, for example, as you can hear the reports practically from all sides, from Russian Ministry of Defense, from Russian Foreign Ministry, and representatives of the industry, all kinds of industries, not only just military. Some items will already have been increased production. By the end of the year, it will reach 7 to 8 times more than it was produced or at the start of the SMO, Special Military Operation. We're talking about a ramping up unprecedented. No Western country can do that. Fact is, they cannot do ramping up at all. I mean, because they don't have any more expertise, they don't have a real capital, and they don't have capability anymore, especially when you look at the speed and basically dynamics of the industrialization of Europe. It's just absolutely mind-boggling. And here we have to come to the fact that what Mr. Bhadra Kumar mentions, he mentions about, when you read his excerpt, he talks about the Mr. Graham Allison. And he talks about that Graham Allison, and he refers to his piece in the foreign policy. Foreign policy is a neocon rag, despite the fact that it was supposedly created and founded not by neocon, but this, and we are talking about, of course, Samuel Huntington. And here's Graham Allison, who 10 days ago, who writes that Xi and Putin have the most consequential undeclared alliance in the world. It's become more important than Washington's official alliances today. Well, good that he understands Mr. Graham Allison, and he is professor of government at the Harvard Kennedy School. And if you look at his curriculum vitae, he's a Reaganoid. He has a degree in philosophy and political science, as you might expect. He was basically hanging out with the advisory capacity to such people as Caspar Weinberger, who was a rabid, not just anti-communist, he was a rabid Russophobe. And this is the same Mr. Allison, the same guy who was coming up with all kinds of risible geopolitical concepts, and he started his kind of return to the frame in 2017, and this was in the national interest, and with his famous article, which is called America and Russia, Back to Basics. So look how he framed it. however demonic, however destructive, however devious, however deserving of being strangled Russia is, the brute fact is that we cannot kill this bastard without committing suicide. That's the kind of political and educational level of the guy who would know shit from Shinola in terms of the modern military strategies and operational art. But this is the guy who, again, he has all those check boxes of the classic neocon and American exceptionalist checked. And for some reason, he is still considered that he has some degree of the, competences to discuss anything about Russia. His other thing was obviously this famous bullshit, which is complete pseudo-intellectual construct. The theticide is this trap: are the US and China headed for war? In 12 of 16 past cases in which a rising power has confronted a ruling power, the result has been bloodshed. And yeah, he developed this risible idea because obviously, as we know, everything we know about history, especially how they fought on those galleys and oars and bows and arrows, is so important for today. And one of the things which really kind of underscores the complete idiocy of the American intellectual class and its inability to think and be tied to the reality is this. Look at this. He says that in the same Thucydides gap, he talks about the rise of 5,000-year-old civilization with 1.3 billion people is not a problem to be fixed. It is a condition, a chronic condition that we will have to be managed over a generation. And he is talking about the generation of the United States politicians, I guess. And as we know today, judging by the state of the American intellectual and power class, no, you will not have new generation. In fact, he still thinks that United States will remain this preeminent power, which it already is not. But that tells you how exceptionalists think, and that tells you how they are completely detached from the economic, military, political realities of the outside world, which I demonstrated to you in the beginning of my video. And then we have obviously continuous butthurt from the other great empire on which the sun never set. As we all know, but we know the result, so please bear with me. We have this guy, and let me put it this way. I already am on record speaking to about some American generals who absolutely lost any kind of the professional ethics and paraded themselves as clowns who wouldn't understand anything about modern warfare. But at least in the United States, you deal with still military superpower. It has the outstanding military components, still some of which are largest air force in the world. Doesn't mean that it's most effective, but it is largest, definitely. And of course, our outstanding Navy, for all its problems, it's still a magnificent force. So when you look at this, like, oh yeah, I understand. And that is why it's so insulting when you have those 3-4-star generals and admirals running around and parading themselves like clowns. It's like, guys, take a heed, just you represent the armed forces of the superpower, of military superpower, but they don't. But of course, when we come to it comes to London and United Kingdom, we have, oh my God, this is pathetic, really. I mean, as Alistair Crook, speaking to Judge Napolitano a couple of days ago, he stated in a West general, basically that the West run itself into the trap and doesn't know how to get out of it. But when you look at the butthurt and so loserism on the British part, that is something to behold. It is absolute anomaly of the human behavior. And here it is, just one of the examples, and if you want to listen or read about other examples, you are more than welcome to visit my friend Larry Johnson's wonderful blog, and he talks about this too, about British. But look at this. Here's Express talks about this Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Crawford, who, I mean, he's very excited that UK Challenger 2 tanks on ground in Ukraine today. And after that, you read this thing in Express, and basically the whole thing about it is how incredible Challenger 2 is, that it has, and as I wrote, in my blog, it has the cloak of invisibility, it has the gravity and warp drive, and it has the blasters and lasers and all that. So in general, the Challenger 2 is the best thing ever in the universe. So, and he of course talks about that, Russians will have huge issues dealing with it, sort of. But of course, in the end, he basically gives up, and he betrayed his anxieties, if not the panic, and look what he concludes. We should also be aware that the Russians will be very keen to destroy or capture one or more of the Western tanks being operated by Ukrainian armed forces. Imagine the propaganda coup of a captured intact Challenger 2 being paraded in Red Square in Moscow. It doesn't bear thinking about. Well, and that's the issue. I mean, these guys, listen, I don't know what they teach in Sandhurst. Evidently, they do not teach them real military history. They don't teach them real operational art and strategy, and even tactics, probably, of the modern warfare, because obviously most of them, they do not have their real access to their war correlates in their special military operation on the Russian side, especially because Russian side actually does have the good score, unlike it is Ukrainian side, which is primarily in propaganda. But here's the issue. I have news for this Mr. Crawford and other people who think that those Western tanks make any difference. They don't. You remember in my last video, I already stated that they can send 60 tanks, they can send 120 of those tanks. They will be annihilated the same way as any other tank on the Ukrainian side. And it's too late to be kind of worried about the fact that Russians will capture and will parade those tanks. They will. It's easy. They will destroy most of them, and they will parade some of them, but not on the Red Square. Mr. Crawford needs to really read up on Russian history, because they will be paraded on the Park Patriot in near Moscow suburb. And yeah, they will be there on permanent display, as most of the modern NATO weapons are already there. You can look it up. Many of them are there. And why, propaganda coup when Russians do it every day, the Russian forces? And yeah, now when you add this funny, unpleasant situation with Wagner Group basically capturing most of the Bakhmut, Artyomovsk, and the rest of the helpless armed forces of Ukraine being pushed out to the western edges, fringes of the city. So what can I say? I mean, and again, I'm conveying to you the information from the first hand, people who actually fight and are there on the front lines, but those are people whom I know personally and I can trust, and they are professional, that basically Russians deliberately leave around Avdiivka and around Bakhmut a little bit of the opening to allow all those forces try to resupply and being annihilated while doing so. So yeah, this is an excellent attrition way of just basically annihilating whatever NATO has left in its gas tank, and it's not much. Now we have the confirmation from the New York Times that basically all this foreign legion has shrunk from 20,000 to no more than 1,500. Yeah, obviously, who wants to die for Ukraine? And when you look at this, it just basically draws you a picture of an absolute geostrategic catastrophe for the United States. And no matter how they spin it now, you cannot spin it anymore. You just can't. Russia sells oil for, as I already stated, for the price it wants, and it's established by the market. The annihilation of the armed forces of Ukraine continues, and of course today reasonable statements that they will start some kind of counteroffensive. Sure, let them start. Let them see where it will lead them to. And it's like Russia will stay in this configuration of the strategic defense. Mind you, strategic, not operational defense. And strategic defense doesn't mean that you will not continue to do offensive actions. Actually, Russians continue offensive actions and gain ground every day. No, but they deliberately sit on the strategic defense configuration to allow the rest of Ukrainian forces to meat grind themselves into dust. And then, of course, yeah, they know in Washington, they begin to understand that basically it's over. And more Europeans try to say that it's over, but again, Europe lost its subjectivity long time ago, so it doesn't really matter what Europe thinks or does. So we have the situation, and Mr. again, going back to Mr. Bhadra Kumar, wonderful piece. It also explains to you why Comrade Z's peace plan was, well, politely rejected, and it was expected. So, and this is what I wanted to tell you today, because it's absolutely important to keep you abreast with the events, and especially the situation with the oil and other energy resources. Well, yeah, let's put it in plain, simple words. The energy agenda and sanctions of the combined West, headed by the United States, I'm not talking about even Europe, failed miserably. But Europe will die economically in terms of industrial output, because without Russian gas, there's nothing there. And the United States knows this, but there are other issues which are related to Russia and between Russia and the United States, which are beyond the grasp of the European Union. And now with the basically news that Mrs. or Frau von der Leyen wants to become in contention or in running for the position of NATO Secretary General. Good God. Yeah, NATO is done. It's toast. I mean, so what can I say? So this is what I primarily wanted to tell you about today, and I think so these are important updates. And as always, I want to profoundly thank my wonderful supporters. Some of them are my friends, actually, for supporting me on the Patreon, and this is what allows me to do what I'm doing. And so, as always, guys, those who want to support me, you know how to support me through Patreon and buy me a coffee or two, and please subscribe to my channel, and that will help me to continue to do what I'm doing. So have a very nice week ahead of you, and I'll talk to you later, guys. Bye bye.